Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside Furman Athletics, where, oddly enough, we do just what the title says. We go inside the world of Furman University athletics, normally inside a particular sport, but this time taking a 30,000-foot view of just about everything, I guess. Hunter Reid, the longtime sports information director, is our guest on this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. Long time is kind of a nice way of saying, man, you're old. and I'm not that far behind you.
Yeah, it's amazing how the years will sneak up on you a little bit, but feeling good, though. I don't feel that old today.
Nah, you look good. 38 years.
Yeah, it's been a good run. Furman's been a great school to represent, and it's been just an honor and a pleasure to work with some great coaches and student athletes and administrators over all these years, and really couldn't have picked a better school to work with.
When you came here 38 years ago, was there anything at all that suggested that this was going to be the career move for Hunter Reid?
Well, I tell people all the time, I'm from a two-red-light town in Georgia, so I have the small-town experience. I went to a reasonably small high school. I went to a small college, Presbyterian College, right down the road here. So it's entirely fitting that I work for a small university, and I've never subscribed to the philosophy that bigger is better. Not knocking that. It's right for a lot of people, and I can function in a big school environment, but I've been very comfortable at Furman. I've always realized there are a certain number of Division I institution jobs in this country, and those aren't growing a whole lot. So I felt like I was fortunate to have grabbed one and was prepared for it. And but it's just been a pleasure, and this is a profession I've always wanted to be in. Probably didn't know it at the time when I was a senior in high school. Chasing chains on a football field, scoring basketball games, writing for the local paper and the Athens Banner Herald and so forth. So I didn't know what sports information was at the time, but certainly learned about it when I got to college, and just pretty much been my career, and don't have any regrets at all.
You hit on something there that I tell people all the time, because early in my career, I had aspirations. I wanted to go and get as big as I could. And then, it began to dawn on me when you have a family and you're in an area where you're happy, that it's okay to be happy. It's okay to bloom where you're planted, so to speak. And I'm finishing year 12 or in the middle of year 12 here at Furman now. And I tell people all the time, somebody will say, well, why stay there? Why not do this? Why not do that? There are only roughly 350 of these jobs in America. It is a very, very limited scope, and I'm fortunate to have one, just like you're fortunate to have one.
Yeah, it's Dan, I want to say I've never really fallen in the trap of letting other people define me and, tell me what to do.
That'd be a whole other conversation for another
tell
day.
Me what to do for a career, although I've listened to a lot of people I greatly respect. But I've always felt like you can be challenged in any job. Mm-hmm. You don't want to ever be complacent, and whether it's technological changes that have come in our profession or any profession for that matter. But you get the beauty of collegiate athletics and athletics in general, even in the pro level, is you get a new crop of student athletes, and you certainly over time will work with a number of different coaches as they come and go. So there are challenges within any job, even if you remain in that position, like I have here, fortunately, at Furman for a long time. So to be able to represent a great school who has the right perspective, you're working with top-notch student athletes, smart, intelligent, articulate. Same thing with coaches. When they're on the field of competition, they're representing the very best. And I can honestly believe there are not a lot of SIDs who can say that. Mm-hmm. I can say that, so I've been very blessed.
And one of the things I've got on the panel there talking about surviving, not just surviving, but thriving as the industry has changed. And I want to get into that in just a minute. But you talked about working with student athletes, and when you've been someplace a long time, things begin to circle back to you, and your this day in Furman history football tweet today, back in 2013, Marcus McMorris with an 89-yard touchdown return on an interception that helped Furman beat Sanford, and of course that was part of that finish in 2013 that led to getting into the playoffs, the Southern Conference Championship. And Marcus is in now his 6th year as my sideline reporter on these broadcasts. So we can say, Marcus, now you're getting old as well.
That's right. I always enjoy, giving Marcus his due, and certainly had a fine career here in football, and played a big role in our championship in 2013. And who knows, maybe by posting that tweet and that Facebook post today with this day in Furman football history, maybe it'll bring us some good luck Saturday at Mercer. But yeah, it's to watch these young men and women who excelled as athletes, who have gone on, and made their career choices and are excelling in that field. It brings me a lot of pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed football at homecoming a couple weeks ago, to see a lot of former players who've really gone out in the world and made their mark, and certainly made their mark here in football.
There was another McMorris play where he picked up a fumble against Elon and ran back about 92 yards or something for a touchdown. And I always give him grief and point out that, hey, Marcus, if you watch the film of that clip, you almost got run down by a tight end. I used to say offensive lineman, but I give him credit. It was actually a tight end, and it wasn't as close as we tried to make it out to be. Marcus, clearly the best athlete on our broadcast crew, bar none. But it's being able to now look back with some perspective and see things like that. To me, and I would imagine it's the same thing for you, and you've got more of it because of your history here, but it makes you appreciate a job like this even more.
Well, it does. Just the job incorporates a lot of fun elements in terms of being a historian, to watch these young men and women excel and on the field, and be able to reflect on that even later. And I love doing this kind of stuff. I love digging out reaching into the archives and saluting great play from years ago. And that's just one of the benefits of having been here a number of years. I can do that. Yeah,
and speaking of historian, if you ever want to know who is manning the Furman Paladin Twitter account at a specific time, if there's a Civil War or Millard Fillmore reference that pops up, it's this guy.
Well, I have to tread lightly sometimes. As you know, I'm opinionated, so you got to really check up on that when you get on social media. I kind of got a little wrist slap back earlier in the football season with a Korean War reference off a tweet from that Sanford game. So just got to be careful with that kind of stuff. So I have to constantly remind myself.
But it's nice to have that in your repertoire if you need to really reach back to do something to make a point, whether it's publicly or privately.
Well, it's true, and thank goodness I have forgotten a few things. It's probably to my benefit, but glad I can recall a few things still.
Hunter Reid joining us on this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. So let's talk about the sports information industry, because like everything else in the world of college athletics, or everything else in the world, you could just leave it at that, the business has evolved and changed over the years. Some of us don't think it's necessarily changed for the better. You have found a way to adapt, stay relevant, stay on the cutting edge, while not losing, in my opinion anyway, the essence of what a sports information director is supposed to be for his or her school. How have you been able to do that?
I don't know. I guess I've conned enough people over time.
Smoke and mirrors?
To remain in this position. But, I absolutely have to say this from the get-go. Part of the secret of being able to survive in this business or profession, like any, is you got to be, willing to adapt to change. And but a big part of that is hiring good staff to help you deal with that. And I've been blessed beyond measure to have great staff over the years. Not a whole lot of turnover, which I've often wondered, am I the biggest pushover, or am I a nice guy? Maybe somewhere in the middle there. But I have a tremendous staff, and they are so capable, technologically, where I may be, it doesn't take much to sink my ship there. But when I'm speaking of Jordan Caskey, Julie Puri, and Wesley Herring are my three assistants, and they all bring an incredible skill set to the table, and as a team, we get it done. And I'm just very blessed in that. But I've seen a lot of changes in the profession over the years. A lot of demands, a lot of expectations have changed. Athletic directors have changed. Their expectation level has changed. What you have to deliver is more so what it is than what it was a few years ago. I've said recently, speaking to a group of students from North Greenville who came in for a little one-day symposium where they met with virtually everybody within our department in different areas. I told them that that you just got to be willing to change, adapt to change over time if you want to stay in this profession. But the main thing is also be committed to having some fun. You got to have some fun in this profession, because if you're not Kirby Smart or Nick Saban or so forth, you're not getting rich pretty much in this business. It's got to be for the love, and it is for me.
What has been, in your estimation, the single biggest change in the sports information profession since you got into it?
Well, there's this understandable expectation for real time news. You're old enough, Dan, to remember when we had telecopiers, it took 6 minutes to send a page, a copy that you would have typed up on an IBM Selectric 2 typewriter,
or the old Radio Shack Trash 80.
Right. and so the way we process information is it's just like night and day. It's like carrier pigeon era versus where we are now almost. And we're only speaking about 35 to 40 years, so not that great a time. So the way we handle and transmit information is just really remarkable compared to where we were only a few years ago. But that expectation level is there too. People expect information in real time, and we've got to deliver.
The other aspect of the job, and people who follow me on social media know that I love what I do, and you put in a lot of hours as a broadcaster, especially at this level where you're not flying charter planes and you're driving just about everywhere, and crossover season like we're in right now gets to be a bit of a headache sometimes, but you deal with it and you move on. But you do work a lot of hours, you spend a lot of time away from home. Having said that, I would not do this job, because you think about this. He just mentioned 3 assistants, so 4 people in an athletic department to take care of 18 sports. And that you have got to be really, really good at compartmentalizing things and being intentional about clearing personal time. I would think you can speak to that, because you guys work way, way too many hours. As much as I travel and much as I work, I wouldn't do your job.
Well, I want to say that we, if you're in sports information, you ought to have had a pretty good idea what's expected before you get in it. We know it just comes with the territory. There's give and take. We're blessed to have had the support of the administration to allow us to have 4 positions. A lot of schools can't say that.
Right.
When positions have been cut in our profession, all across the Division I, Division II spectrum on down, unfortunately, our profession has been cut up pretty good. But we have that's not been the case at Furman. I think they've understood the value of what we bring to the table, and have committed to our operation and maintaining that, because it does require a certain level of staffing to have 18 sports, to give those sports what they deserve in terms of support from our area. And so we're pleased with that. But it's there have been a number of changes over time, but we've got a good situation here at Furman. Hope to continue it.
I would be remiss if you and I did not spend a few minutes to talk about Jordan Caskey and having him back on the basketball broadcast the other night in his regular segment for the first time in over a year. What was just incredible. And as I told him, it's now Jordan 2, cancer nothing. But you were without him for over a year, almost a year and a half, in his second battle with cancer. Just to see him back, and he's not 100% yet. He's cancer-free. He's not 100% yet. He's still rebuilding his strength after everything he went through. But just to see him back, I mean, what do I have to complain about,
Well, you're right. A lot of times when we think, life's too tough, and as we see it, it always is nice to step back and see what other people are dealing with. And it puts a little perspective on maybe some of the gripes and complaints we have ourselves. But to see what Jordan has gone through, like you said, the second battle, and this one was a little bit more of a knockdown, drag out, and he's won it at this point. We are just thrilled almost beyond words, and to say not beyond words as an SID really means something. To have him back in full go, and I think Jordan was a little antsy the other day. He said, Hunter, it's been almost 2 years since I was actually in charge of a basketball game, and I have an unfailing belief and confidence in Jordan. I said nothing is too big for that guy to not handle, because he's so smart and so competent and so experienced. But to have him back in that chair, I think he was really excited about it. And needless to say, we all were. It's an honor and just an incredible privilege to work with an outstanding young man like that, and that over a number of years.
I think probably the person who was even more excited was Beth to finally have him out of the house.
That's true.
After a year and a half, or whatever it was. But yeah, he told me the same thing. I'm going to be leaning on Wesley to do this. I'm going to be leaning on Wesley to do that, because Wesley Herring filled in during men's basketball last year, and we're 8 minutes into the game, and he's texting notes to Bryant Lambert on TV and me, and he, it's like riding a bicycle. You can understand the apprehension, though. But he is a professional.
He is, and Jordan and I have fortunate to have known each other for over 20 years, and Jordan's experience with Furman goes back. I mean, he's been a Furman fan all his life because his family is Furman. His grandfather signed the note when Furman moved out here from downtown. He was the chief financial officer of Furman. So he's got Furman purple blood in him going back generations. So how much he loves this place, and I think that love has been reciprocated. We love Jordan.
Yeah, it's great to have him back, and if for no other reason, now we can get back into our stupid jokes from the movie Airplane and from Bull Durham and Major League, and yeah. You miss the important things.
That's right.
You miss the important things.
That's right.
I hate to say your primary focus, but maybe the one that you're most noted for around here is football, and being the lead for that in the department, the football historian, so to speak. And you pointed out something interesting after our loss to Samford, and the record book bears it out. Just about every passing record that we have here at Furman, and you look at that top 10, I think it's either 8 or 9 of them, all came in losses. This is a program that was built on its ability to run the football and pass off of that. And that is it's interesting. That is something that's transcended generations and coaches over the last 35 or 40 years.
Well, I think, any program, be it Furman or Clemson or whatever, they have a template, for success over time, and or generally do. And I think it's definitely the case here at Furman. And it has been, somewhat, I call it fun, to note how, successful, Furman's been, obviously, but it's been geared to our ability to run the football. And when you look at our top passing games, as you referenced, Dan, we clearly don't win many of those games. So you can say that there's a little bit of desperation there when Furman has to throw it a lot, because that means we're probably not having much success running the football. And fortunately for Furman, we've had a lot of success over a number of years being able to run the football, and that's translated into wins. But, noticing those trends, and the program develops a character over time. That's certainly, you sized it up there. That's Furman's character.
Well, and speaking of running the football, although he didn't play in the second half against Chattanooga, Dominic Roberto has been on a tremendous run, and you can tell me how historic it is. But prior to Chattanooga, his previous 11 games, going back to last year, all the way up through the game prior to Chattanooga this year, in 11 games he had rushed for 1,301 yards and 13 touchdowns. That is obviously getting it done on the ground. That's the Furman that you came to know and love here, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's over time you see, you're fortunate to witness a lot of great players, and Dominic is certainly carving out his space, his slot in that list of great running backs here at Furman, and they all do certain things well. It's I would hate to be a defensive back facing Dominic Roberto. I've seen more Western Carolina defensive backs run away from him than to him
Yes.
over the last couple of years, and he's terrorized a lot of opposing teams just with his running style. It's 231 pounds coming downhill at you. I wouldn't want to take on that guy, but he's certainly had a fine career here. Somewhat of a late bloomer. I mean, didn't do a whole lot his first couple of years here because he, was not in a premier starting role.
Yeah, I had a guy named Devin Wynn who was pretty good.
Pretty good running back there too. But when he's gotten his chance the last couple of years, he's certainly taken advantage. And our program, our team's certainly the better for it. And he is on a pretty good stretch right now. Didn't have 100 yards against Chattanooga, but not many teams do. But certainly was you could tell a big part of Chattanooga's focus, and then maybe that opened up what Tyler Huff was able to do, run the football and throwing the football as well. So even when he's not putting up 252-yard games like he did against Western Carolina, he's a factor and has to be accounted for on the field, and that speaks to his abilities.
You mentioned Western Carolina. I can't let that go by without a little shout-out to our friend Daniel Hooker, who's the SID up there. Are SIDs, especially inside a conference, are they like broadcasters, or are you like your own unique little clique?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you speak of Daniel, he's one of my favorites, and who, by the way, is nice to have him back. I was thinking about him this morning when I got up. He spent a few days in the hospital recently, but is back on the job now, and I was going to shoot him a text or an email today just to give him a heads up, tell him we were thinking about him. But, we're very close because obviously we share a lot in common about what we're doing, the late nights and whatever, doing notes and so forth. So there's a lot in common there, and we understand the challenges that we all face at all our different institutions. So he's a tremendous asset for Western Carolina, and there have been so many others in the Southern Conference over the years that I've been blessed to know and work with.
So let us in on a little secret, because we as broadcasters, when we get together, sometimes it's usually a gripe and complain session, either about
SID's never.
Yeah, that's what
is
it the same thing?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. I mean, full disclosure, SIDs are some of the most cynical people walking the planet.
It seems to come with this business, doesn't it?
Well, it's probably our way of keeping our feet on the ground, because we can't become fanboys and cheerleaders and so forth. You can't get too high, you can't get too low. So, you naturally almost want to humble yourself a little bit before you get too carried away. You don't want to get too depressed if your team loses 6 in a row or whatever. So, there's a little bit of that, sarcasm, cynicism, but it's healthy if used in moderation.
So, to travel with our football crew sometimes, David and Marcus and Tom and me, it kind of gets the same way. It's like, we take shots at each other, but nobody else better talk about us.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Hunter Reid joining us here on this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics, 38th year as the sports information director here at Furman. Speaking of football, fairly big game coming up on Saturday, huh? Down at Mercer?
Yeah, it's what you want to play for.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be involved in big games in November. If you're not, then you're probably looking forward toward the end of the season, and we're certainly not doing that here. We're excited to be, still in the mix, possibly for a conference championship, certainly for a playoff spot. Got 2 big games ahead of us to finish the regular season, and Mercer, which will be a tremendous challenge. They came in here and pretty much owned us last year. We didn't play particularly well, lost 24-3. So I know Coach Hendricks and his guys are looking to rebound and regain some pride there. It will be a challenge. Drew Cronick, is an outstanding coach. Had 2 tenures here at Furman. We certainly know what he's capable of coaching, and he's demonstrated that already. So they'll be ready for us. A lot on the line for Mercer as well. So that's what you want. I think there'll be a great crowd down there in Macon this Saturday. Looks like there'll be good weather. So it's a big stakes game, and certainly glad to be part of it.
And I would imagine, and we'll be doing our preview video coming up a little bit later on in the week, as we always do, but running the football and stopping the run could take center stage here.
Yeah, it's when you look at both these teams, Mercer is extremely talented. They got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They have two premier receivers. I think their secondary is pretty good. I don't want to sound like a coordinator here giving you a preview. You'll get enough of that later. But, we certainly, bring a lot to the table too. And, a player like Ryan Miller and Joshua Harris and Dominic, Roberto, and then Tyler Huff, we certainly feel good about. We feel like, we've improved a lot offensively this year with his fine play, and certainly demonstrated that against Chattanooga, and we could go for another repeat performance like that on Saturday.
Are you ready to start, and he's not even played one full season here yet, but are you ready to start categorizing Tyler Huff and where he fits maybe historically, not numbers-wise because he hasn't been here a full year, but impact-wise from the quarterback position in this program since you've been here?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think I honestly think you need a little more time to evaluate, and personally, to maybe slot him on where he stands among some of the great quarterbacks that I've seen. One thing that I just tickles me to no end, I'm sure it does Coach Hendricks too, is his ability to make plays with his feet. And this day and age, when you have a quarterback that can do that, in addition to obviously throwing the ball well, and then you've got a chance to be, a little bit of a difference maker, obviously, and separate yourself. And he certainly has that potential, looks to me like, because what he did against Chattanooga, I've not seen, out of a Furman quarterback in a number of years, where he can make them pay, if they don't account for him as a runner. And then the second they, start looking for him to run the football, he'll drop back and throw the ball over their heads or whatever. And he certainly did that well enough on to beat Chattanooga. So he's got that potential. He's certainly shown it already. I think we got to see him a little bit over time to maybe rank him maybe in my top 4 or 5 quarterbacks.
But he's definitely on the radar.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think it's clear. It's plainly evident that he's a difference maker, and has certainly brought a lot to our arsenal. This fall offensively.
As we get into wrap-up mode, here's one of those big pressing questions, interviewer to interviewee. 38 years, Hunter Reid.
I've heard that already.
Yeah. What keeps you going?
I just love athletics, man. This is something I've done all my life. It's not my only interest. I've always felt like I could be successful in several other areas had I chosen, but I've had no regrets. Just to be able to work in something that you enjoy, then I can honestly say I've never looked at the clock on any given day and said, God, I got 2 more hours before I can go home. Never once have I.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, and again, I'm not in this profession to cash big checks and own a yacht or whatever, but to be able to do something that I've enjoyed virtually my entire working career, I feel extremely blessed, and the fire still burns bright. There's some red tape elements, the jobs that aren't particularly enjoyable. And those seem to have grown over time, but probably not unlike a lot of professions. But, I really enjoy watching our teams compete. All of the preparation that we all do, but I'm probably the crowning, the cherry on the pie for you is actually calling the game. And seeing how your teams perform, and I still love that, and it's such a connection there. And I've often said, if I couldn't play it and I can't coach it, this is as close as I can get to it.
That was the same thing with me with broadcasting. At the end of the day, 2 things come to mind, and you talked about the red tape. Every job has aggravations, and there are those days where you feel like banging your head against the wall, and you say, "Why am I doing this?" And that's just natural in any profession. But at the end of the day, Hunter, I get paid to watch a ball game. I mean that
Yeah, we all wish we'd get paid a little bit more to watch that ball game, but no. But I know
radio's mantra. I've told you, where else can you have this much fun for no money? That's the way it goes.
I say it's another day, another 50 cents in sports information. So, but anyway, no, you're right. It's
you get paid to watch a ball game.
Right.
Tom Van Hoy, the first time I ever heard this, I always give him credit when I use it. Years ago, told me, he said, if life is a department store, we work in the toy department.
That's very, very well put.
Yeah. So, man, it's good. I'm glad that you were able to carve out some time for us this morning, and just kind of, again, we try to go inside every department, and we hadn't really gone inside the sports information department. So just kind of give folks a little bit of glimpse of what you're doing now. This 20, 25 minutes you've taken with me, I'm sure you'll be expected to make that up somewhere else later on. Right?
Oh, I've already allowed for that. I got a women's basketball game tonight, our season opener.
Yeah.
And looking forward to that. And got a little bit more preparation work to do for that. But we're good.
Got the women's basketball. We're recording this on Wednesday, late morning, so it'll be dropping before noon on Wednesday. Women's basketball does open against Erskine at Timmons Arena tonight. Game that was supposed to be played last night. Erskine couldn't get the waiver, so they're playing it tonight. Got the cross-country squads going out this weekend on the regionals. Southeast regionals. You've got basketball, men's basketball, and a huge matchup with Belmont on Friday night. A great mid-major get-together at Timmons Arena at 7 o'clock, and then at 3 o'clock on Saturday, Furman and Mercer, 1:30 airtime on the Fan Upstate. So you got work to do.
Yeah.
And so do I.
There's always something to do.
Not as much as you, but that's the way it goes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
That is Hunter Reid, and this has been another edition of Inside Furman Athletics. Thank you for joining us. We will look forward to seeing you again next week, and we probably have one, maybe two more of these we'll do before we end up taking our break until January of 2023. We'll let you know that specifically next week. But until then, for Hunter and all of us at Furman, as always, I'm Dan Scott saying God bless you. And so long, everybody.